Hi guys, Heidi ho. So I've been out in my bus this morning trying to do some insulation, but it's hot. I don't know if you can hear, I got a fan going behind you there. We're only supposed to get to the mid 80s today, according to weather.com. But when I looked it up a little while ago, the humidity was 98%. If you live in the western half of the U.S., you can pick your jaw up off the floor. So I've been out here trying to do some insulation and get rid of some of the wiring mess in here. But I think I'm going to take a break. I got to get more construction adhesive anyhow. So when I looked it up, the weather for here in Iowa up this morning, I also looked up the weather for Denver. Okay, and it's kind of balmy for Denver. It's 19% humidity, but Sunday they're going to be 92 degrees and what was it, 12%, somewhere in there. That's more common for Denver. If you're in the eastern half of the U.S., you can pick your jaw up off the floor now. But I thought I'd show you some of my insulation in the bus and maybe have some discussion about it. Okay, so I'm using foam board and I'm sealing all the gaps with it's lightweight stuff, and all around all the bits. And when I shave all that off, I'm going to cut it up into little bitty pieces, and then I'll loose fill it in when I box in the wheel wells. So that's what's going to happen there. I'm going to do a whole separate video, because I know somebody's already in the comments typing the word spray foam, why I think using foam board is actually better. And this is the sidewall underneath the windows here, and I just thought I'd show you guys. It is working. Get this lit up here. I don't know if you can see. Yeah, 93.8 degrees, so under 94 degrees. Alright, now let's go over here. This is where I haven't insulated, right? 126.1, so it is working quite well. Okay, so in that last clip, hello, Kitty Bob came to say hi. In that last clip, the sun is shining on that side of the bus, so the metal is going to be hot. But that, you know, when you get 125 degrees plus metal, it's going to radiate heat off into the space like a wood stove. I can't stress enough, you guys, the number one way, if you want to keep your bus or van or whatever, your RV, cool when it's hot outside or warm when it's cold outside, these things right here. The wheels on the bus go round and round. And the way to stay comfortable is don't be where the weather's not comfortable. I was just talking about Denver a couple minutes ago, and the humidity's way low. There's always the joke about, but it's a dry heat, right? But it's true. Also, Denver is, what is it? Well, it's right at a mile, 5,280 feet above sea level. I'm at about 1,000 here where I live in Iowa, and so that means in general, throughout the summer, an average, Denver's going to be, what is it, 4 times 3.5, so 14, 15 degrees cooler than it is here in Iowa, in general. I made a comment on a very popular YouTuber's Patreon page one time. She was in New Orleans, I think, at the time, griping and having a fit bitching about how hot it was. It was last summer. And I said, why don't you go west? Well, she was very indignant in her reply comment and talking about how, um, it was just like, how dare I make a suggestion like that about where she should spend her time. I stopped paying money to her on Patreon for sure and unsubscribed and all that stuff, so I don't know where she's at now. But this, the wheels on the bus go round and round, is your number one way to stay cool in the summer and warm in the winter. And being in the western half of the U.S., you can gain or lower altitude much easier than you can back east. Yeah, I know there's mountains in the east, but they're not anywhere near as high as the Rockies. I've been working on getting the ceiling insulated in my bus. And I've got a piece of insulation cut for one section of the ceiling. I try to avoid going to Walmart like the plague, but the next time you go there, go back to the sewing section and get one of these cloth measuring tapes. They're only a couple bucks, not much. They work a lot better at going around bendy parts of your bus than regular measuring tape. Anyhow, now that I have this piece cut, make sure you're in frame here. I don't know. What I'm going to do, you can't see the viewfinder on the camera very well. It's bright out here. Again, I'm going to come up for my bus 3.5 inches from one end and make a mark. Then I need a squared off line. Use the factory edge here. I'm going to score my insulation. Then I'm going to use, for me, I'm just using the width of my framing square here, which is 2 inches, to make a score every 2 inches across this board. And on down the line, the last, I think 17 inches I measured or so, I don't have to make any scores because it's pretty flat in that part. Okay, I messed up on that last clip. I want the shiny side of the foam board facing inside. And some people are going to say, oh well, it's supposed to face outside because of keep the sun's heat out. But we're going to use, if you can get my face in here, geez. We're going to use something similar to Henry's Tropicool on the roof of the bus, and then before long it's going to be covered with a deck and shaded. What I'm really interested in is we're going to use a cubic mini wood stove for heating. And wood stoves give off radiant heat, and this is a radiant barrier, the shiny stuff. And I want to keep that wood stove heat in the bus. That's why I'm putting the shiny side in. And I showed you earlier, where's my hand? Over that way. The wall insulation that I've been putting in, but there's going to be another layer and the shiny side of it will be facing in. And I know somebody's already typing about the air gap. I know about it. I won't have room for it, but there is going to be a tiny bit of air gap. So now that I have my board scored on the right side this time, all I have to do is pop each score line. One thing I have learned, this white stuff here, construction adhesive won't stick to it. So I have to peel it off. Comes off in little bitty pieces. And then my construction adhesive works just fine straight on the styrofoam. Do a test on a piece you're not gonna, first, because some construction adhesive might eat the styrofoam. Okay, so I've got some construction adhesive on my piece of foam board, and I'm using a polyurethane based construction adhesive. Seems to not burn through the styrofoam. It's a funny thing, it has to have some moisture to cure this construction adhesive, but once it is cured, it's moisture resistant, and that way I'm hoping if some moisture, some condensation gets into between the roof of the bus and the insulation, the construction adhesive won't let go. I only really need it to hold until I get the ceiling up, but having construction adhesive in there will help keep it from developing squeaks when I drive later. You can ask my wife, that drives me nuts. Okay, so here's my piece. Let me get it. And it doesn't take much construction adhesive. I'm just going to put it up here. Force it in. And I made these supports to put up here until construction adhesive cures. Just kick them in like that, real good and tight, and it'll stay up there. And tomorrow I'll pull the supports down. Got a wire here for a light. I have to make sure it has room. Now, I didn't grab a can of it. Once everything's up, I've got a number of cans of spray foam in a can, like great stuff. And all the gaps and cracks in between these pieces and the bus are going to get sprayed with that. I also already did a video before and showed you how I'm drilling the ribs and injecting that spray foam in a can, great stuffy stuff, into the ribs. That'll help with insulation there. I think in that other video I calculated the space taken up by all the ribs, and it wound up to be like a 3 foot by 7 foot hole without any insulation. Okay, so on the outer sides of my bus's ceiling, I'm going to put the metal back up. And why did you take it all down? Well, the insulation that was up there already was crap and it was full of mold. And if you're considering not pulling your ceiling or your side panels below the window, you better, because I'll almost guarantee you there's black mold in there. Anyhow, once I get these filled with the great stuffy stuff. I think it's a GE knockoff. Before I put the ceiling metal back up, I've got a roll of, this is called sill sealer. And it's made to put over the concrete foundation on your house before they start attaching wood. And this is 5.5 inches wide. I can take scissors and cut strips out of it the width of these ribs, which is 1.5 inches. And I'll put that on here before I put the ceiling up to help with what's called thermal bridging. So I think I've got a pretty good plan going as to how to insulate this, and hopefully it'll keep us warmer when it's cold out, and cooler when it's hot out. Like I said before, first thing, the wheels on the bus go round and round. We'll get through this.